supermarkets. He earned a bachelor's degree in evolutionary ecology from the University of Connecticut in coral reef conservation from Nova University in 1993, and he's collaborated with scientists from dozens of institutions on research projects, from the Arctic to the Antarctic. And I want to first introduce John Hocevar to talk about our oceans and what's happening.
Thank you all for coming. Can I get a big hand for my badass friend Jane? Friends, our water planet is in real trouble. If we take good care of the ocean will take care of us. A lot of people don't understand, don't realize that over the past few decades, the oceans have absorbed over 90% of the carbon dioxide that we put into the atmosphere. And almost a third, or over 90%, excuse me. Still too quiet?
Just take
I'm
the
just
mic
going to
out.
take it out.
Yeah.
There we go.
There you go.
Let me say that again. Over the past few decades, the oceans have absorbed over 90% of the heat from our carbon emissions and almost a third of the CO2 from our fossil fuels. If we take good care of the oceans will take care of us. Woo! Unfortunately, we haven't been taking good care of the oceans. We've radically transformed our oceans through industrial fisheries. We've eaten about 90% of the big fish across the world's oceans. Bottom trawling has degraded and damaged, uprooted and crushed corals and sponges and ruined seafloor habitats. Bycatch, the accidental catch of our fisheries, is killing hundreds of thousands of sea turtles a year. Our fisheries are killing about 100 million sharks a year. These are numbers that are so big, it's hard to even get our head around them. But we know what the solutions are. We know how to manage fisheries responsibly. We know that we need a network of fully protected sanctuaries. Sanctuaries are the best tool we have to rebuild depleted populations, to protect biodiversity, and to increase the resilience of our oceans so they can better survive the changes from climate change, from ocean acidification, and from plastic pollution. We've put so much plastic into our environment at this point that it's in the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food we eat. We know what to do about that too. We have to stop producing plastic at the source. We have to stop making so much stuff that we use once and throw away out of material that basically lasts forever. And we can do that. 5 years from now, I think the plastic situation is going to look very different. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity right now where the United Nations is negotiating a new global ocean treaty. And this is going to give us an opportunity to scale up sanctuaries for the first time. Right now, only about 2% of the world's oceans are strongly protected. We can get up to 30% by 2030 if we get this treaty right. I'd love to have your help with that. We need to let the State Department especially know that we care about our oceans and that we want to see some real leadership for a change. Whales are a huge part of the solution to climate change, believe it or not. If we allow whale populations to recover to the point where they were before we started killing them, they can actually sequester 1.7 million tons of carbon. And that's true of a lot of species in the ocean. If we allow some of the big predator fish, if we allow those populations to recover, they're very powerful in sequestering carbon. And they're turning all that energy and carbon that is eaten by plankton, that's taken up by plankton, and they turn it into poop that sinks to the bottom. That's a good place for it for now. I'm really happy to be here. We have got some great speakers here with us today, and I'm not going to keep talking. I want to hand it over to them. But I just want to say again, thank you for coming, and please keep doing all you can. This is a moment where we really can't sit back and watch. We really need everybody to step up. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you, John. And now let's hear it from Ted Danson.
Hi, I'm Jane Fonda's new trainee. I will go anywhere for you, Jane. I'm an actor, an activist. This is what I've been doing for the last 30 years, ocean activism. I'm the guy who stands in front of the tent and says, thank you for watching, cheers. Now I want to introduce you to a marine biologist who has something really important to say. And one of the things that I've learned from my scientist friends is that if we do 3 things, we can help the fish come back. If you stop trawling the bottom of the ocean and destroying the habitat, if you stop dragging up those huge nets and throwing overboard 1/3 of the world's catch every year because it's not the fish you're after, if you let science set the quotas and tell you how much you can take out of the ocean and still have a sustainable fishery, if you don't do those 3 things, fish will come back. And this is not just a, oh, good for the fish, touchy-feely kind of thing. This is about world hunger. If we were to manage our fisheries correctly around the world, you could provide 1 billion fish meals a day sustainably if you could quantify landed fish that way. Now, if you're a vegetarian, great, even more important. But there are a lot of countries around the world that depend on fish for their only animal protein and for their livelihoods. So this is massively important. It's not tree hugging. This is about money, about jobs, about feeding the world. So, you don't cut down rainforest to grow something to feed a pig or a cow. You don't use fresh water, except maybe for the processing part of fish. Eat small, eat local, eat wild. It will work. And then, along comes climate change, which can literally undo everything that's going on with the oceans. You've heard from John, a scientist, but briefly, what I know is that climate change is warming our waters. That means our coral reefs are dying because they can't keep up with the changing temperature. It means that ocean acidification is attacking the bottom of the food chain. It means that the fish you were catching off your coast all of a sudden are swimming 500 miles north or south, finding cold water that they can survive in. Sea level rise because of climate change. So many things that you all know about are happening to our oceans. So, that's why I'm here. But I want to go back to Jane for a second. I turned 70 about well, I'm almost 72, let me put it that way. But when I turned 70, I thought, okay, time to rest on my laurels. I'm Ted Danson, I saved the planet. Cheers, I mean, come on. I'm 70, I need to slow down and relax and enjoy. And then I met Jane Fonda, who had her foot on the gas pedal and was not only 80, she was going 80 miles an hour at all times. My wife, Mary Steenburgen, was working with her on a film. They'd work 14-hour days, then Jane would get on a bus and drive to Sacramento to fight for service industry fair wages. She'd bring 50 people with them, drive back down. Then she'd do a fundraiser to flip the 48 or whatever. You know, she's astounding. So she became my mentor. And here I am. Here I am about to get arrested. You know, at first it was like, yeah, of course I'll come get arrested. How cool is that? And then I went, wait a minute, I'm going to get arrested. And it focuses your brain a little bit. So here's what I realized. All of this is inconvenient. It's inconvenient. Al Gore got it right. This is inconvenient. It's inconvenient for politicians to stop taking money from the oil industry because it's huge money they get. It's easy. All you have to do is deny science and say that there's no such thing as climate change. Easy. It's inconvenient for the oil industry to not drill wherever and whenever they want because it's huge money. It's inconvenient for industries to stop burning fossil fuels. It's inconvenient for all of us to realize that we have to share the planet's natural resources with everyone, including people we don't like. It's inconvenient to realize that we are all in this together, that either we will all make it or none of us will make it. It's very inconvenient. I also want to thank Greta. Our house is on fire. And it's time that we stop standing around complaining that it's not convenient to change our ways. It's time to start behaving like we care about our children and our grandchildren. Hey, we can do this. We really can. It may be a little inconvenient, but it's not as inconvenient as fires and floods and mass migration and droughts and starvation. That's inconvenient. So, come on down. Get arrested. Get your head on straight. Thank you.
Right, this is not a time for business as usual, right? Right. Our next speaker is Jennifer Jacquet. She is an assistant professor of environmental studies at NYU. She was formerly a postdoctorate researcher at the Fisheries Center, Department of Mathematics, University of British Columbia, where she also did her PhD. Jennifer works at the intersection of conservation, cooperation, and technology with an emphasis on, dig this, evolution, function, and the future of shame. Her areas of research and interest include marine ecology, conservation, and evolutionary biology, cooperation, social approval. This is one interesting babe. The evolution and function of guilt. Oh, man, you got your hands full. Wow. Honor and shame. And the role of information technology in shaping environmental action, which falls under a broad interest in what she calls, the tragedy of the commons. Please welcome Jennifer Jacquet.
It's a little inconvenient to follow Ted Danson and Jane Fonda. I'm not used to that. I don't have my lines memorized. Oh, louder? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming here today, and thank you, Jane Fonda, for your activism through the years, and particularly right now. We need everyone in this fight. Climate change is the most urgent environmental problem facing the world, but it's also worth remembering it's not the first or only one. The global impact of industrial societies began in the oceans, with the decimation of the great whales, and then moved along at a neck-break pace toward all the other problems like pollution, deforestation, overfishing, etc. In every case, the oceans have been impacted. In the case of climate change, we humans have not actually experienced the full impacts of climate change because the oceans have cleaned up a lot of the mess for us. As John mentioned, they've absorbed roughly 30% of our emissions since the Industrial Revolution, and scientists are worried that this trend might not continue. We have not fully appreciated the role of the oceans and what they have done for us, but the animals in the oceans have certainly experienced the warming waters, the higher prevalence of disease, and the lowering of the pH that's occurring as the oceans become more acidic with additional carbon dioxide. Living coral cover around the world has decreased by at least a third, and in some places 2/3. And scientists have shown that fish are moving toward the poles, both north and south, at a rate of 26 kilometers per decade. Large numbers of fish will disappear from the tropics by 2050. Some say the movement of fish represents opportunities for fisheries in the Arctic, and some worry about the future geopolitical conflicts over these fish. They speak about these animals merely as resources instead of considering that this is nature sending us a sign. Corals are bleaching and fish are moving because we have made their world uninhabitable. They are seeking out the old days. Fish are moving to breathe. Climate change is just one threat to aquatic animals. The largest threat is still direct exploitation, the global fishing industry. Aquatic animals are the last wild animals hunted at the global scale for food. There are at least 1 trillion fish killed every year by fisheries, and that's to say nothing of invertebrates. This data about 1 trillion, what does that number even mean, is really rough because we don't even think about these animals as individuals. We don't think about them as species. We think about them as seafood. John Hocevar made the case for marine protected areas, and they have to be part of our future. But we also have to scale back the fishing effort and take boats off the water. There is no standard of ethics that can justify the boat known to some as the Atlantic Dawn, the largest industrial fishing boat on the planet. Factory fishing has to end. It's always tempting to see technology as both the problem and the solution. The same engineering that led to coal factories and utility companies and bottom trawling boats can lead us toward a better future. But we know we cannot count on technology alone. There was a film made in the 1960s that depicted the office of the future, and it was right about all sorts of technology in the office of the future. It got even fax machines right. But there were no women in the office. What we care about can change as fast as our hardware. As the historian Lynn White wrote in 1967, what people do about their ecology depends on what they think about themselves in relation to things around them. We need a revolution in our relationship with the planet. So that's what we're here fighting for today. That's what we're all willing to get arrested for. It's not about a specific policy like a high seas marine protected area or reducing fishing effort or the Green New Deal. We want all of those things, but fundamentally we want a new relationship with animals and the environment on land and in the oceans. We want a new set of values. Thank you.
Now I understand all those things you study and write about. Okay. Beautiful. Our next speaker is Denise Patel. She is a New York City-based human rights and environmental activist. Her personal and professional work has focused on grassroots organizing, building coalitions, and leading advocacy campaigns to address occupational and environmental health impacts of climate change and toxic chemicals. She's previously worked for organizations such as the New Jersey Work Environment Council and has been a leader in the fossil fuel divestment movement, working with the Divest Invest Network, with 350.org and the People's Climate Movement New York. Denise holds a Master's of Public Health from Columbia University with a focus on health and climate. Please welcome Denise Patel.
Thank you so much, Jane. I was speaking with Jane yesterday, and I was noting that I actually started my activism as a student on college campuses. And if you told me 20 years ago that I would be arrested one day with Jane Fonda, I would have been like, oh, that's nuts. That's never going to happen. But here we are. So I really am grateful for this opportunity to talk about oceans and to really connect it to the work that I do, dealing with the fossil fuel industry and with toxic chemicals. I'm here today because we know that our oceans, our planet, and all of us are in peril. Not only are our oceans dying because of climate change, but they are being polluted with plastic by the same industries that put us on this path of destruction towards climate change. And we know that they have no intention of changing their ways and to blame us as individuals for the problem that they have created. All of the plastic that ends up in the ocean starts with the fossil fuel industry. It starts at the oil wells and the fracking sites where fossil fuels are extracted and pulled out of the ground, polluting our communities, the air and the water, and creating incredible, enormous health impacts on the people who live around them. Where the oil and gas is then shipped via pipes to manufacturing facilities, it's releasing more toxic chemicals and greenhouse gases along the entire way, causing things like asthma and heart disease and cancers. And we, as good citizens, put our plastics in the recycle bin and think that we're doing our part to save the planet. But in reality, 8.3 billion tons of plastic that has ever been produced, of all of that, 91% of it has never been recycled. Most of it ends up in landfills and in incinerators where it is burned, releasing more greenhouse gas emissions and toxics that pollute the air and the water and harm our health, or it ends up in the oceans where it hurts sea turtles and whales and all of the life-sustaining systems that we've heard about today. And further, as plastics continue to break down, they release even more greenhouse gas emissions. So the problem with plastic really is a problem that we need to address if we're going to address climate change. All of this destruction for a product that we use one time for 5 minutes, and it lasts forever. All of the plastic that is being pushed on us by the fossil fuel industry, BP has said that it expects 70% of its future revenues to come from plastics. Exxon, who went into court this week in New York for deceiving their shareholders about the risks of climate change on their business model, and testified in Congress that they knew their business model would cause irreversible change to the climate. And in addition to that, led an effort to deceive and to deny climate change. They're just planning more of the same. We know that if they are successful, plastic production alone will account for 15% of the remaining carbon budget that we have from now until 2050. And we know that it's going to kill our oceans. But we also know that we can solve this problem. 50% of all of the plastic that has ever been produced was in just the last 15 years, along with the fracking boom. But it's not just the fossil fuel companies that are to blame. For the second year in a row, our movement, the Break Free from Plastic, audited all of the brands that we found that are littering our waterways, our oceans, our beaches, our parks. And we found for the second year in a row that Coca-Cola was the biggest plastic polluter in the world. Along with Coke, Nestle, Pepsi, and Unilever continue to rank near the top. But these companies actually have a choice to make. They can choose to change their ways, or they can choose to be like the fossil fuel companies. And I don't think Coca-Cola wants to be like Exxon. So we're calling on Coke and Nestle and Pepsi and Unilever and all of those companies to join the Break Free from Plastic movement to set targets that are going to phase out single-use plastics. We want them to invest in refillables and reusables. You used to be able to buy a bottle of Coke in a glass bottle and return that. You can't do that anymore. We need these corporations to take a stand to stop the climate crisis and to protect our oceans and our health. We're also calling on our elected leaders at the state, local, and national level to enact a Green New Deal. We need a just transition that moves us away from dirty, polluting industries and onto a pathway that will decarbonize our society and create millions of jobs with renewables, regenerative agriculture, and by going zero waste. We need a Green New Deal that centers the needs of communities and workers that have been most harmed by these industries and by the climate, and put those at the center point and help guide us. And we are calling on all of you to join us in the streets and on Election Day to push our elected leaders to stand up for the fossil fuel and stand up against the fossil fuel and plastics industry. And we want you all to vote. Vote for the people that are going to hold them accountable and put us on a pathway that ends the climate crisis. We know the story of plastic is a story about all of us, but in reality, it's being written by the fossil fuel industry, and it's our opportunity now to change that. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. You know, I grew up before there was plastic. There was a time when there was no plastic. And guess what? We did just fine. It was just fine. Our next and last speaker is Whitney Crowder. She's a sea turtle rehabilitation coordinator at Gumbo Limbo Nature Center. Whitney came, what is that word? Oh yes, all the way. Whitney came all the way from Florida today. Well, I came from California. No, she did. She came all the way, and the people she works for weren't quite sure what it meant, and they didn't want her to get arrested. But she's here, and we're so grateful. She's going to talk about what she sees happening to sea turtles. Please welcome Whitney.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. This is truly an honor to be here. Okay. Ever since I was a little girl, I've wanted to be a voice for animals because they don't have one for themselves. Throughout my career, I've seen firsthand the crisis of our oceans. I've been in the environmental field for over 15 years and have dedicated my life to saving sea turtles. Sea turtles are dying in record numbers, and it is directly because of us. Tiny turtles are eating so much plastic that they are starving to death. Stop and think about that for a minute. In one dead baby sea turtle, we found over 104 pieces of plastic in its stomach. After sharing a photo of that on social media, it went viral. It was reported all around the world. I had no idea how impactful this photo would become. I see what we are doing to the oceans every day. I've become desensitized because it's the only way I can cope with a harsh reality. But the fact that this photo has resonated with people all over the world gives me hope. Hope that the millions of people who saw the reality facing young sea turtles will help to bring real change. I've seen more injuries from boats than I can count. These injuries are often fatal or leave turtles exposed, their organs exposed with missing limbs. Sea turtles can get entangled in things like discarded fishing nets, making it impossible for them to swim. They are drowning, weighed down by our trash. I have seen sea turtles entangled so severe that they are flipperless and unable to swim. Marine life are plagued by diseases related to environmental degradation. Sea turtles are suffering from a disease that causes tumors to cover their bodies, including their eyes and their flippers, causing them to be blind and have difficulty swimming. This debilitating disease is becoming more and more common every year, and all of this I've seen firsthand. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. The most alarming thing that I've seen continues to be the excessive amount of plastic found in our very young sea turtles. These newly hatched palm-sized sea turtles live out in the open ocean. They find habitat in the floating seaweed, which is essentially a magnet for floating things like plastic. Every year, due to strong winds, hundreds of these little sea turtles are washed back to shore along our Florida coastlines, and many of them die. This year, we have found 100% of our dead washback sea turtles with stomachs full of plastic. Every turtle is filled with plastic. We now know plastic is found from the surface of our oceans all the way to the seafloor. This is a crisis worldwide. Sea turtles face a multitude of man-made obstacles every day. All of these injuries can be heartbreaking to see, difficult to nurse back to health, and devastating to lose the ones we worked so hard to save. Even if we heal their injuries and release them back to their ocean home, this doesn't mean they're safe. They face the same threats that caused them to get sick or injured in the first place. I've had people ask me, why care about sea turtles? Why are they even important? Well, here's why. Sea turtles have been around for over 100 million years and survived the mass extinction that wiped out the dinosaurs. Losing sea turtles would create a cascade of disruption in our oceans that we may never recover from. Sea turtles are an indicator of the health of our oceans. Without healthy oceans, life on Earth cannot exist. We have the power to turn this around, and I think that we can, because the future of our children will depend on the actions we take right now. I recently joined Ted Danson and John Hocevar in a documentary, Troubled Waters: A Turtle's Tale, and one word stuck out more than anything to me in the film: refuse. It is no longer reduce, reuse, or recycle. It's simply refuse. Refuse the plastic to-go cups, refuse the plastic containers, refuse the plastic straws. Just refuse. We must refuse to accept the mindless use of plastic to start to transform the role that plastic plays in our society. Who knew that one word could be so powerful, especially when spelled out with the plastics from the stomachs of tiny turtles? All of this plastic was found in this one tiny turtle. Our oceans can't wait. I never felt like we were running out of time to make a change until now. These fire drills began to bring awareness to our climate crisis. In 2003, OSHA Gray Davison warned us that there was a fire in the turtle's house, and we have watched it continue to burn for 16 years. That can end today. The sea turtles are warning us now that they are in trouble, and so are we. Is it possible that by saving the sea turtles, we can save ourselves as well? Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Denise. In closing, I just want to remind everybody, this is the epiphany that I had about 4 months ago, largely because of Greta Thunberg, I might add. Individual lifestyle choices like not using single-use plastic and cutting back on our red meat and recycling and driving hybrid or electric cars, these are all very important. But you know what? We cannot scale individual lifestyle choices fast enough to get us where we need to be in 11 years. We can't do it. And that is why even the scientists, the nerdy, usually neutral scientists, sorry, John, are saying that they believe now that the only way that we are going to change course in time is with mass mobilization of people on an unprecedented scale. So, anytime you have an opportunity to go into the streets, do it. If you live near a place where they're trying to start a new extractive infrastructure and fossil fuels, put your body on the line. Put yourself on the line, especially us grandmas. What the hell do we have to lose, right? When I see those young people, those students out there protesting and demanding that we help them have a future, I'm thinking, how can we let them do this by themselves? They didn't cause this problem. Neither did we, by the way. The fossil fuel industry wants us to think it's our fault. Bullshit. They lied to us. They hoodwinked us. They cheated on the science. They kept it from us. They tell us they're doing one thing when they do another. Even now, they're criminals. And we need to change this. And we're subsidizing them $16 billion a year. Our taxpayers' money goes to subsidize fossil fuel. Most of it wouldn't even be profitable without our taxes to subsidize them. Okay, so let's do it. Every Friday we're going to be here. We're going to join the young people when they have a demonstration. Thursday nights at 7, we have a live stream digital teach-in because these are complicated issues and we want to go deeper. The other Thursday, 35,000 people watched us. All over the world, people were tuning in to find out about the Green New Deal and about oceans. Makes me hopeful. So please join us when you can. Stay brave. This is not a time for business as usual. And God bless. Thanks for being here.
Let's go. See you.
Oh, he's good. He's good. I know he's too big.
I'm sorry. If you haven't filled out a form and you have that, you haven't been. Sorry. Right, so everyone who did not fill out the form, please get on the other side of the blue fabric. We're not doing any more today. We'll have other opportunities. We're here every Friday. So here. Thanks so much. Thank you for using your platform. Just keep people away. No, this is Jane's assistant. This is Jane's assistant. Fine. Everyone else. I need you, if you're not here, you did not prep, I need you to step back onto the other side of the blue banner, okay? No, I need, okay. We've got everyone? Okay. Let's move.
We got a bunch of rabbis here. So we're trying to make sure people know.
David and Jennifer, we're going to start walking this way.
Maddie?
Yes. Going that way.
A rabble of rabbis.
All right.
Put on my jaunty interesting hat.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. Thank you.
Tell everybody to come.
Okay. Sure, we're proud of you guys.
Keep up the good fight, Jane. We're with you. Keep in motion, save our ocean.
Keep in motion, save our ocean. So we're going to save our ocean. We're going to go this way.
Keep in motion, save our ocean. Keep in motion, save our ocean.
Heather, we need to get them up.
Keep in motion, save our ocean. Keep in motion, save our ocean.
Save our ocean.
Yeah, it's just so we don't, because that's too big of a ledge. We need to go off the grass this way.
Okay, sorry, my bad.
Jesse, go on that side.
Let's go this way. Is it too slow for, or too fast for the rabbi at the end?
Real slow. The rabbi.
Folks, we need you all to carry a path so that we can actually walk. You all move back one thing.
What do we want?
Climate justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Climate justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Climate justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Climate justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
Yeah! The seas are rising and so are we. 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 Yeah! Show me what's for president!
So, once we get back here, we're going to put down on the sled. If you can pass the message down the line for
What do we want? When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Climate justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Climate justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Climate justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Climate justice!
When do we want it?
Now!
Yeah!
I need you to get out of the way, okay? He's security. Oh, you're security. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Wait, swing the other side around now, please.
Just stay in the front.
Sorry.
Hi.
Do we have them in a line? They're swinging around like a barn dog, okay? And then we're going to go together. So, Sam, can we get them to swing around that way?
Who's air? Say our air. Who's air?
Our air!
Who's water?
Our water!
Who's climate?
Our climate!
Who's climate?
Our climate!
Who's air?
Our air!
Who's land?
Back.
Who's water?
Our water!
Who's air?
Our air!
Who's climate?
Our climate!
Who's future?
Our future!
Who's future?
Our future!
Whose children?
Our children!
Whose children?
Our children!
Whose children?
Our children!
Whose climate?
Our climate!
Whose future?
Our future!
Whose air?
Our air!
Whose climate?
Our climate!
Yeah! I want the halls of Congress to hear us. Say yeah!
All right,
There we go. Yeah!
let's go forward.
Jane.
Keep moving them back.
I just talked to this so that we cross up that line and see if
Can you just go?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry to put you on the mic, but you're great. Just, I don't know.
What do we want? Say Green New Deal. What do we want?
Green New Deal!
What do we want? What do we want?
Green New Deal!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Green New Deal!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Green New Deal!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Green New Deal!
When do we want it?
Now!
and it'll be overnight.
Ira,
Yeah!
They don't
Ira,
tell me.
don't, Ira,
Who's
Ira.
climate?
And I trust you.
Who's climate? Whose children? Whose children? Whose future? Whose future? Whose air? Whose air? Whose water? Whose water? Whose oceans? Whose oceans? Yeah! Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like!
Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like!
Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what
Shut it down!
The entire street! If they don't get it,
Get rid of them! No. Just keep following me. Keep following me. Probably not a great idea.
You gotta have a professional pass. You have to be on this side of the Balliards.
no!
You don't have a professional ID. You have to be on this side of the Balliards.
Everything should be going straight right now. Well, we gotta go around the barrier.
Show me what constituency looks like!
Okay?
Show me what democracy looks like!
This is what democracy looks like.
Show me what a protest looks like!
This is what a protest looks like.
Show me what democracy looks like!
This is what democracy looks like.
Show me what democracy sounds like!
This is what democracy sounds like.
Show me what people power looks like!
Where do we want to go? Straight that way.
Yeah. Thank you.
We're going to go out towards the middle. And then go into the
We want democracy! When do we want it? Now! We want democracy!
We're
When do we
going
want it
to
now?
go in
We
front of
want
here.
democracy! When do we want it now?
Doing
We
great
want
going
democracy!
across
When do we
here,
want it
Diana.
now? We want democracy! When do we want it? Now! Yeah!
We're going to go into the street like we did last week. Okay. We're going to keep moving this way.
When I say who has the power? When I say who has the power, you say the people. Who has the power? 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 People. Yeah!
There seems to be a resistance to walking this way.
We're going to get you all set up and then we're going to rearrange the crowd.
They don't act, vote them out. If 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 they don't act, vote them out. Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Show me what democracy sounds like.
This is what democracy sounds like.
Show me what democracy looks like.
This is what democracy looks like.
Yeah!
Media folks, we are going to be walking straight back, so please take a couple steps back so we have room to move. Please take a couple steps back so we have room to move.
Vote, speak, act. Vote, speak, act.
Straight
Vote,
forward,
speak,
y'all.
act.
Gonna move this
Vote,
way.
speak, act. Vote, speak, act. Vote, speak, act. Vote, speak, act. Vote, speak, act. All
right, we need you to move back.
I need you to keep. Vote, speak, act. Vote, speak, act. Vote,
Let me get in front of this. Let me get in front.
vote, speak, act.
Go for it.
Vote, speak, act.
Move back.
Vote, speak, act. Vote, speak, act.
Moving back this way.
Speak, act. Vote, speak, act. Vote, speak, act. Vote, speak,
Watch out
When
behind
our
you.
climate's under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back. When our climate's under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back. When our climate's under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back. When our climate's under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back. When our climate's under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back. When our planet's under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back. When science is under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back. Yeah!
No, I'm
oceans are rising, and so are we. The 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 oceans are rising, and so are we. Are rising, and so are we. The oceans are rising, and so are we. The oceans are rising, and so are we. The oceans are rising, and so are we. I mean, we don't want to tell you what to do, but so are we.
Keep moving up. Dude, get a different angle, maybe?
Yeah, on the left. Slow down. What are you slowing things down, man? Please stop telling me what to do.
Dude, you are always a problem at every march I've ever seen you at. I really
Am I doing differently than anyone else? You're slower than anyone else. Back up. I'm not moving back. You'll get back. Don't worry. Hey, hey, ho, ho, fossil fuels have got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, fossil fuels have got to go. Hey, hey, ho, ho, fossil fuels have got to go. Just move back. Please move back, because they're going to trip. It's bad. You got to come in.
Yeah, so let's have, so maybe we have Wi-Fi. Well, but physically, but I feel like when we get, it's like, we have to post it that way. So is that what we're going to do, Sam? Okay. Oh, no, yeah, so let's just show you. Sharon! We're gonna go.
Move back, please. So are we. The oceans are rising, and 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 so